officers that are serving you today. The deacons, we have Brother Tunguru, Max, and Brother Kingston Ilukena. Those are the deacons that serve you today. And for the people here up, we have the brother who gave the prayer, Brother Kalola, and me myself, Brother Kalonda. And the sermon will be taken by our pastor, Pastor Imakumbili. These are the people that are serving you today. So the song that we are going to open with is 359. 359. That is the prayer song. We are going to stand up and sing it.
Happy voice of Jesus calling. Happy voice, happy voice of Jesus calling. Who will go and wait today? Fields are wide, the harvest waiting. Who will bear the sheaves away? Lord and Lord, the Master calleth, rich reward he offers free. Who will answer faithfully, saying, Here am I, O Lord, send me. If you cannot cross the ocean, can the heathen nations go? You can find the heathen nearer. You can help them let you know. If you cannot speak like angels, if you cannot preach like Paul, you can tell enough of Jesus. You can say He died for all. If you cannot be their watchman, setting light on Zion's walls, pointing out their paths to heaven, offering life and peace to all. With your prayers, with your bounties, you can do whatever demands. You can be like faithful Aaron, holding up the prophet's hands. While their souls open are dying, and their hearts are closed for you, let not hear you idly saying, there is nothing I can do. Gladly take and task it gives you. Let His way of pleasure will answer quickly when He calleth. Here am I, O Lord, send me.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. Children, you are going to be quiet. The sermon is not for elders only, for all of us. We will also be taking noisemakers so that you remain after the service for another sermon. And those that are going to sleep. So let's listen attentively. and think us something for our own salvation. Give the time to the preacher.
I hope I can remove here. I'm alone. My brothers are far behind. Open your Bibles with me to Matthew chapter 27, verse 5. Another one to open Luke chapter 10, verse 37. Then another one to open John chapter 13, verse 27. Those three verses. 3 chapters and verses. The first one is Matthew 27, verse 5. The second one is Luke chapter 10, verse 37. The last one is John 13, 27. Who has found the first one?
Verse 5. Matthew 27, verse 5.
Yes.
So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself.
He went away and he did what? He hanged himself. The second one, don't forget, he hanged himself. That's what I want you to put in mind. He hanged himself.
Luke 10:37. And he said, He that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus to him, Go and do you likewise.
All right. The last one. John 13, verse 27.
John 13:27. And after the Satan enters into him, then said to Jesus unto him, Thou that doesn't do quickly.
Do what you have to do quickly. So we have 3 sentences here. The first one is, he went and hanged himself. The second one is, go and do likewise. The third one is, that which you want to do it quickly. Somebody had never read the Bible in their lives. Now they went into town looking for a Bible. He found a shop full of Bibles, those with the maroon covers, black, brown, and they picked the black one. He had never read the Bible in his life. When he reached home, he said, how do they read the Bible? He said, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and hold the Bible and open it while my eyes are closed. And then I will put my finger on any chapter and verse that my finger will land on, and then I will read. The first statement that he read, when his finger landed on this verse, was, go and hang yourself. Then he said, this one is not okay. Let me close the Bible again. He closed the Bible and he opened it, and then he said, my finger where it lands, that's where I will read. It landed on Luke chapter 10, verse 37, which said, go and do what you want, go and do likewise. Meaning, go and hang yourself, do likewise. Then he said, but what's wrong with the Bible? He closed it again, opened it for the 3rd time, and then he took his finger and said, where it will land, that's where I will read. It landed on John chapter 13, verse 13:27, where it says, whatever you want to do now, do it quickly. He said, this book is not for me. It wants me to hang it myself, and then I must do it quickly. See this, the book they say it is a good book for people. From that time, he never read the Bible. The question I want to pose to you is, how do you read your Bible? And when you read the statement that you don't understand, what do? Do you say, this Bible, I think is sent for particular people, not for me? Many times, we read a portion of the Bible without reading from the start to hear the context of the whole matter. And we make a conclusion and say, this is not a good book for us. It is for particular people. That's not the sermon. I was just trying to draw your attention so that no one goes to sleep. The song we just sang is a song that Jesus is calling you and me to service, saying, "Hark the voice of Jesus calling, who will go and wake today?" I have observed and listened very attentively every time when we read the Sabbath school book on the questions like, who gave a literature to anybody? We find it's 0. Who gave a Bible study during the week is 0. Which tells me that all the week there is nothing that we do. We don't even give even a verse to another person or a pamphlet to another person on the street. Now Jesus is concerned. The lesson that we read today, the lesson study, the quarter, it is talking about witnessing and how Jesus used to meet people in Jerusalem, in the crowded streets of Jerusalem. He did not regard a certain particular people to say, these are the ones that are qualified for the kingdom. He looked at everybody as a candidate of heaven. And this morning, our little ones and the leaders of the church were playing a sketch over the man that was sent to Nineveh to go and preach the gospel. And having reached there, he did his work, even though from the beginning he ran away from the task. But in the end, he did the job, which of course is the task that every member of Rootfontein and any other Seventh-day Adventist church must do, including myself, because time is not with us and people are perishing for lack of knowledge. The title of the message this morning says, someone is waiting for you to come. In extension 9, someone is waiting for you to knock at their door. I do not know the names of the locations yet here, but at every spot where you are, somebody is waiting for you. Our opening text is coming from the book of Colossians chapter 1 verse 23. On this verse 23 of Colossians 1, we find that before the end of his life, the Apostle Paul was able to declare that the gospel had been preached to every creature which is under heaven. Paul, from the time of his conversion, he had been running up and down, preaching the gospel, going to Rome, going to all the towns of the Corinthians and the Philippians, trying to complete the gospel because the gospel was burning in his heart and he could not sleep. The question is, how was it that such a small amount of disciples were able to accomplish such a big job within the shortest period of time? Is it because in their heart they were sick seeing the people perishing while everybody, a member of the church, was sleeping, I should think that Paul and the rest of those that were running around displaying the gospel that time were in their hearts burning, knowing that this world is coming to an end soon, even when Jesus had just left the earth going to heaven. And when I read the Bible, I discover that there were 5 statements that Jesus had spoken to the disciples that made them to continue to be on their feet, running up and down, trying to communicate the gospel of Jesus to everyone. And these statements, the first one is found in the book of Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, which says, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." It is because of this statement, which had come from the lips of Jesus Christ saying, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men," that kept ringing in the minds of the disciples that they could not sleep, but continued every time to run around and proclaim the gospel. The second word or sentence that came from the mouth of Jesus that made the disciples not to sit down is coming from the book of Luke chapter 5 verse 10, which says, From now onwards, you shall catch men. When Jesus said to the disciples, from now onwards, instead of catching fish, you will catch men. These words rang in the minds of the disciples, and they continued to run around spreading the gospel, because they knew if they don't do this job, many people will perish. And when they perish, their blood will be required upon their heads. The third statement that came from Jesus to the ears of the disciples is found in the book of Matthew chapter 24 verse 14, which says, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached to all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come." When the disciples heard these words, they ran around knowing that the gospel must go around to every creature before Jesus can return to this earth. And this made the disciples not to rest, but to run around every day. We are the disciples of today. And the same words that Jesus spoke to the first disciples are the same words that are spoken to you and me, that should not make our feet to rest, but to run around. The other statement is found in the book of Acts chapter 1 verse 8, that Jesus spoke to the disciples by saying, "You shall be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in Judea and in Samaria, even to the remotest parts of the earth." When these words fell upon the ears of the disciples, they were always not sleeping, but always thinking, how can we finish the gospel that Christ has given us so that we can go home? The other statement that fell from the lips of Jesus to the disciples was found in the book of Matthew chapter 16 verse 15, which says, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creature or all creation." These words made the disciples of that time fail to settle down, but to run up and down to try and accomplish what Jesus had given them to do. The early church had this objective before them, and their objective was to preach the gospel, nothing else. At that time, the preaching of the gospel was not to persuade people that Jesus is coming back, no. The preaching of the gospel was to tell people that Jesus, who died, has risen and is alive. That was the only message. Why? Is because there were not many people that didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead. So the disciples had a duty to convince people that Jesus died and has risen. Today we have two messages to preach: the resurrection of Jesus and the returning of Jesus from heaven to this earth. We know that Muhammad died. He never rose. We know that Buddha died. He never rose. Jesus died, he rose, he went to heaven and is about to return. And the spirit of prophecy by Ellen White says, Satan is not going to imitate Buddha or Muhammad in the coming of Christ, but he is going to imitate the coming of Jesus Christ, which proves to you and me that Christ is supreme more than Muhammad and Buddha. The early church did not discriminate anyone in the preaching. The poor were reached. The poor and the rich also were reached with the gospel. They talked to everybody they met, either on the street or in the houses or when they were eating. According to the book of Acts chapter 5, reading on verse 42, we hear that the disciples were daily in the temple and in every house. I want to emphasize on the daily, the word daily. Today, we are only given 3 days to come into church. Friday, opening of the Sabbath. Wednesday, Vespers, which we do not do, actually. Despite Corona, we may give an excuse to say, yes, we are not doing that because of Corona, but we have been doing it in the past. But our friends, according to Acts 5:42, it says, they were daily in the temple. The question is, were they not eating? Were they not married? Didn't they have wives or husbands that they were daily in the temple? They were eating. At the same time, they had commitments, responsibilities to do, but they never neglected to meet daily in the temple. Every 15 hours, they were in the temple, every day. And apart from being daily in the temple, the Bible says they were in every house. Meaning from the temple, they went from house to house, visiting fellow believers, encouraging those that are not coming. Why don't we do that? If I may ask here to say, how many of us know the house of the superintendent? Only very few. How many of us know the house of Elder Kalonda? Only very few. How many of us know the house of Elder Sube? We don't know where each lives. We only come to know where we live when somebody has died. That's when we say, oh, Mr. So-so has died. Well, by the way, where was he living? But we have been coming in church together for years, but we don't know where our brothers and our sisters live. Even at the funeral, we continue to ask to say, the man who has died, is it that what we used to put on a red t-shirt? What we only know is a red t-shirt on somebody's body, but we don't know where they live. It was not like that with the church, the early church of the apostles. They were daily in the temple, and every house was visited. How I wish that spirit would come back to us and revive us again and visit one another and eat from each other's houses. I do not know the problem with the Seventh-day Adventists. To eat food from a house of a Seventh-day Adventist is a miracle. I don't know why. We are brothers and sisters, all of us planning to go to heaven, where we will be eating together, but here, no, it is each one for himself, but God for us all. It is terrible. The Bible continues in Acts 5:42 by saying, they ceased not to teach and preach Jesus Christ. They ceased not, they did not stop preaching Jesus Christ and teaching Jesus Christ every day. The early believers had a focus. Their focus was nothing but preach Jesus Christ to the multitude. So that everybody, when they come to die because they didn't accept the gospel, they should not blame anybody to say, we didn't hear. To preach the good news to everyone, everywhere, was their target. Today, we also, who are the last church on earth, we are told our target is to preach the gospel to everybody, telling them Jesus is coming back. All of us are seeing what is happening around us. The pandemics of Matthew chapter 24 are being seen in our eyes. What we see are what the disciples were longing to see, but they could not see. Us are privileged with our own eyes, we are seeing these diseases coming before us. But that's when the church has gone to sleep completely. No one seems to care for the neighbor, even for my husband who does not come to church, even for my wife or for my children. We just say, if they will die, it's his own fault. Doesn't he have the Bible? When it is not supposed to be that way. Looking at the disciples of the early church, even the people they converted to Christ, they trained them thoroughly that after they were trained, they could not keep quiet, but ran around preaching the gospel. This is why, when we read the book of Acts chapter 8, verse 4, we see a man by the name of Paul, before he became a Christian, persecuting the church, killing those that believed in Jesus Christ. But one day, on his way to killing the Christians, he met Jesus Christ and he was converted to Christianity. We see when we read Acts 8 verse 4, the Bible tells us that they who had been converted to Christianity, when they were running away from persecution, they went everywhere preaching the gospel. They did not keep quiet. They were running and at the same time preaching. Ellen White says, the very time that we are neglected to do God's work, now when there is still peace in Namibia, we will do it when we are running. We shall be running away from persecution, and that's when we shall be preaching. How I wish every believer of today would have a focus like the early church, so that all of us may finish the work of God and go home quickly. Majority of us, ladies and gentlemen, we leave our sweethearts home and come to church. Did you hear what I said? We leave our sweethearts home and come to church. I come, I leave my husband home. I come, I leave my wife home. What should we do, brothers and sisters, to make sure that our relatives, our husbands, our wives, do not die outside Christ? I have a few tips that I want to share with you here that can help you and me to bring my wife to church, to bring my husband to church. If you are a lady and your husband does seem that they do not like to come to church, this is what you can do. Let your husband feel that from the time you joined this church, you have become a better, good wife than you have been before. Why am I saying so? I'm saying so because many times us who are wives, I will come to men, don't say just talking about women. Us who are wives are the stumbling blocks of our husbands in failing to enter through that door. As a wife, try to be more kind and thoughtful to your husband when you are a believer and the husband is not a believer. One wife, a member of our church, I will not mention the church where this happened, came to church like today, and then they knocked off and went home. They found the husband reading a newspaper. Immediately she entered, seeing the husband reading a newspaper, she said, "Is it not a Sabbath today?" The man doesn't even know what a Sabbath is. He's not a member of the church. But married to a woman who is a member of the church, who wants to impose holiness on a husband who does not know God. And then the husband said, "Welcome, my darling, from church. How was the service?" The wife answered and said, "Mwikalefela. Kanisa kimasetting me." I don't want you to set me up. I'm just from a sermon. Just sit. And then the husband didn't take time to say, what she has said, what he just said, "When you take off your daughter's uniform, please, can you bring me some water from..." The wife came from the bedroom. While dressing, she has not finished dressing, she came out and said, "I did not go to church with the stoves and the cups and the spoons and everything. They were here with you. Why couldn't you cook?" Now, do you expect this man to follow you to church? No. The man can just conclude to say, "I do not know who was the preacher in your church today, because it seems the sermon annoyed you. You are not annoyed over me, you are annoyed over the sermon that you heard." Why? Is because the man does not see church in the person that has come from church. Sometimes it's the man that comes from church, goes home, finds this lady sleeping in the sofa with his shoes on the feet. What he does, the man, is to come to the wife and handles the leg and he pushes on the ground. "How can you put your feet with the shoes on my sofa?" The wife says, "But you are from church, husband. What has annoyed you? No, shut up. You cannot put your legs on the sofa with the shoes. Are you mad? You who is from church, Mr. Husband, what is the problem?" The best wife, what they would do when they reach home, they find the husband is reading a newspaper, is to come and sit closer to them, hug them, kiss them, and say, "I missed you, my darling. I wish you were there. The sermon for today was powerful. I wish you were there with me." And then the husband will say, "How was it? What did he say?" And then you start teaching the husband. While you are talking, you stand up, run to the kitchen, bring some water and say, "Did you drink some water today?" Drink. And then the husband will see to say, "Yes, I think today she has been converted." If the husband may make a mistake to ask to say, "But why are you so kind today?" Just say to the husband, "I am born again now. I want you to know that I'm born again." Even at 90, It is Sabbath today in the evening, it is very cold and you are sleeping. You discover that the blanket has fallen the other side, the husband is empty. Cover him. He may not be listening, but he is hearing. In the morning he will say, did you cover me? Say, yeah, I love you. I love you more than myself. You are my chocolate. My sweetheart. I cannot live without you. Some of the husbands have never heard such words from the wife. Please, when we go today, try to say those words, wives. Even as we go out, if the husband is here, just say to him, I love you. This is what it means to be practicing Christianity. It's not just by reading the Bible all the time. The husband just sees you in the corner, reading the Bible while looking at him side by side to see whether he is listening. You are just reading and... No! The husband would love to see that what you read, you practice it. The wife would love to see that what you read and what you go to church for, you practice it. There are some of us husbands, we offend our wives every time. Whatever she cooks, no matter how much time she spends on the cooking, she brings and says, eat, darling. As we are eating, this food. I have lost appetite. She has spent all the hours preparing. She brings it to you, and you know, even when you know this food is appetizing, you don't say, hey, today it was wonderful, my darling. I love you, man. You, I think your mother and father, they did a good thing to give you to me. You are my only woman in Root14. Learn to recommend your wife when she has done a good thing. Appreciate. Say to her, you are giving me nice children. I love you. You are marvelous to me. Whatever good she does, no recommendation, nothing. And the wife eventually says, I've tried everything. This one of mine, he can't appreciate. Then she'll be cooking things that are not okay. Eat. Because she's tired. At the same time, there are times when husbands become like small kings in our homes. They are elders at church, but at home, they are not elders. The wife has been in bed for 3 days, complaining, I'm sick, oh my stomach, my chest, my headache, my legs. What the husband does is to go to the kitchen and take bread and chili and eat, forgetting the sick person in bed. For 3 days she's sick. The husband does not care whether the patient has eaten or not. They are waiting for the wife to wake up from the bed to come and cook with a headache. What kind of a man are you? Are you telling me that because the wife is sick, even the pots and top score, they are sick also? There are some of us men who have been taught by our parents from home. I know where I come from, that's the culture we have. That a man cannot stand in the kitchen. It is a taboo. Who told you that? When your wife is sick, go in the kitchen, cook. The pots are not sick, man. Cook and bring to the patient and say, honey, wake up, eat. I will feed you today. Feed her. That is what it means to love. When you are out there at work, you try to show love to the secretaries. Hey, sissy, come. The secretary is sissy. The wife has never heard that word sissy. Why is the sissy given to another person who is far away from you than to somebody who shares the blanket with you? Call her sissy, my sweetheart, my chocolate. You are the only special woman in the whole world. Tell your husband, you wives also, to say, no matter how you look on the face, I love you. You are the only one that God has given me, and you are the only one that I love. You are my special tomato. If you are a woman who is a church member, it doesn't matter how you can read the Bible to your husband. If you do not practice what you read, it is useless. One hint that you can do for your husband to come to this church is, when you come out of church, go home, prepare the nicest meal for your husband, and come and tell her to say, I'm from church. Come and sit on my legs. I will feed you. And then you feed him. For the first time, feed him. And then you will be asking to say, hey, I think the sermons that are going on in your church are very powerful. And then you say, yes, we have Pastor Nakumbili there. He preaches like fire. Then you tell him, let's go together next Sabbath and hear for yourself. Because he has eaten on your legs, he will come. You know what? Let me tell you something that I discovered. When husbands do not discover love from their wives, and then they mingle with these people that do not believe in God, and they take them visiting places, they will tell them to say, hey, if you do not find love in your house, we can take you where you can find love. They will take them in a compound where there are so many women who are not married. There they will get one. And this woman, when he catches your husband is gone. Because they will be carrying them on the back to the shower, bathing them, carrying them on the back on the bed, and put lotion on their whole body. Things they do not experience in their homes. You think they will see them again? They are gone. Because the reception they get there is powerful. They have never been carried on the back into the shower. Even you husbands, learn to carry your wife on the back, take her in the shower and wash her. Tell her, you are my baby. So today I'm going to wash you and put lotion on your body while you continue kissing her. There are some wives that have never heard kissing. They just see it on television. And then they ask themselves to say, but what's wrong with this one of mine? Doesn't he know these things? Please try it, even if you don't know how to do it, even just putting your on. Copy even from the television and they do it. So that they don't miss anything. You see, when they miss anything, they will look it out elsewhere. Help them not to go anywhere. One man